Hey, what's going on? This is the Body Punch Podcast, and my name is Naz. Let's talk about Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. This weekend at UFC 270, we got Francis Ngannou facing off against Ciryl Gane. The interim heavyweight champion is facing the heavyweight champion in the world. And what an amazing fight this is. I wanted to do a little bit of a review, a pre-fight podcast about this heavyweight bout that has been highly anticipated. Former training partners are fighting each other, both training in France and then going their separate ways. Francis Ngannou is now training with Eric Nixick in Las Vegas. Ciryl Gane remains with his camp. And this is going to be a crazy fight because I think it's two styles, two tactics that are very different from each other. But we'll see where the familiarity between both of these fighters comes into play. Now, I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. They are familiar with each other. I think that we shouldn't expect both of them to know each other right off the bat, because the person that knows most about each other is Ciryl Gane's head coach, Francis Ngannou's ex-coach. Now, Ciryl has talked about it on a number of podcasts now that yes, they did train together a couple of times, but it was only for at least, I believe it was like a 1-month stint that both of them were in camp together and training together. Francis Ngannou is known to train at multiple places. He's known to fly across the world. He's known to go back home or be in Las Vegas at some points. So yes, Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou have trained together. There is footage, but it wasn't like they were training every day together. They weren't training partners all the time. It was only for a little stint. Another point on that is that yes, we have seen the training footage. We've seen that Ciryl Gane has been very confident because of that training footage, because him and his camp have put that stuff out. Now, Francis Ngannou makes an excellent point saying that yes, the training footage is out there. He might look a little rusty, he might not look the best, but when the bright lights are on, it's a totally different game. It's a totally different sport in terms of seeing all of those people staring at you, seeing all of those people watching you, and it's a totally different fight. Now, I think that the main question in this is the fact that what is going to win? Francis Ngannou's new style, his evolved style, if you will, of mixing in a little bit of wrestling defense, always scary with that one-punch knockout power, or is it going to be Ciryl Gane's traditional kickboxing, Muay Thai striking, where it's very unusual for a heavyweight to move like him. He moves like a panther out there, meaning that he's light on his feet. He fights like someone in a lower weight class, and it's very abnormal for someone at this weight class, at the heavyweight weight class, to move like him. And we're gonna see we're gonna see what happens in this fight, which one is gonna win. And I think that this is one of those fights that could play out a bunch of times. These guys could fight numerous amount of times, and the result could always be different. But this night, we're gonna see who wins. I think this is a great grudge match between both of these fighters. There's been a lot of great viral stuff come out where Francis Ngannou is walking right past Ciryl Gane and his team. But at the end of the day, this is one of those fights that could seal the future for the loser. Meaning that if Ciryl Gane wins, who knows what's up with Francis Ngannou. He's had some issues with the UFC. He's talked about leaving. The UFC has talked about maybe moving on from Francis Ngannou. Other organizations, they haven't explicitly said it, but of course they would be interested in Francis Ngannou. And there has been some turmoil, like I said. So will Francis Ngannou stay with the UFC? If he wins, it's an automatic re-up in his contract. And I believe it'll be an extra 3 fights that will go on. It's the champions clause in every UFC fighter's contract. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when one of these guys wins and what happens to the opponent. Just to look at, let's go back to the couple fights that Francis Ngannou's had. He's 16 and 3, won 16 of his fights, lost 3 of them. The 3 fights that he lost, one was outside of the UFC, or it was in the Contender, and then after that, it was outside of the UFC, and then the other one was with the former heavyweight champion of the world, Stipe Miocic, and Derek Lewis. But then after that, he came back and beat Curtis Blades, who was a big test for him. He already defeated him once before that. And Curtis Blades, as we all know, is known as a phenomenal wrestler, takes you to the ground and, elbows you up and does his work down there. Took out Cain Velasquez. That was a weird one. I mean, Cain was coming back from a long layoff, a bunch of injuries, and it seems normal for Francis Ngannou to knock you out the way that Cain got knocked out. But he was right up close to Francis. It was right next to the cage, and Francis KO'd him. Then it was JDS. Then it was Rozenstruik, which was a real fun fight. The build up to that fight, because Rozenstruik is known as a phenomenal striker, and he KO'd him at UFC 249. Then he faced the one person that beat him, or one of the 3 that beat him, KO'd him, but the whole fight was phenomenal. That fight at UFC 260, that fight showed Francis Ngannou's wrestling takedown defense. He also took down Stipe. It was very much a surprise to see Francis Ngannou, the striking king at the heavyweight division, the knockout king at the heavyweight division, mix in some wrestling. It was fun to see Kamaru Usman there. You could see that there was a little bit of influence there. I don't think that they trained together all that much, but I feel like they talk, and I think that he might have had a little bit to play into that. It was just fun seeing him there. But he looked like a different fighter. He looked so patient from Stipe 1 to Stipe 2. And those 2 fights, Francis Ngannou looked so different between those 2 fights. He was nice, calm, and relaxed in the second fight. He took his time. He really measured himself against Stipe. And what a great fight. What a great win to get the heavyweight belt. And then let's look at Ciryl Gane's record. Ciryl Gane has been on a complete tear. 10 wins, 0 losses in the UFC. He's been a great addition to the UFC ever since he joined. He's been beating some great names, JDS, just like Francis Ngannou. He also beat Rozenstruik, just like Francis Ngannou. He also beat Alexander Volkov, and then Derek Lewis in his last fight. The Derek Lewis fight was a big one in Houston, Texas. He came in to Derek Lewis's hometown and defeated Derek Lewis with TKO punches. Derek Lewis was on a tear at the time, knocking out everybody. Still a formidable opponent. He knocked out his last opponent, and what a great win. And I think that really propelled Ciryl Gane into the place that he's in right now. He hasn't had a long He hasn't spent much time in the UFC, meaning that he's only had 10 fights, and I believe 3 of them were outside of the UFC, and then the rest were against a couple of not no-name fighters, but the top caliber was after Tanner Boser. After Tanner, then he started facing the likes of JDS, Rosenstrike, and Alexander Volkov and Derek Lewis. So we've seen some phenomenal stuff from Ciryl Gane. We've seen, like I said, the footwork, the way that he fights has been spectacular. In his last fight, at the beginning of the fight, it really showed what a fight with Francis Ngannou could look like, meaning that Derek Lewis is he's honestly the king of knockouts in the heavyweight division, and the way that he popped in and out was measured in that fight, took Derek Lewis out in the 3rd round, didn't blitz forward all the time, and really took his time to piece up Derek Lewis in that fight. It really showed what a fight with Francis Ngannou could look like. But then Francis Ngannou adding in that new layer of takedown defense, that himself being a little bit more measured, adds a new layer onto this fight, and I'm super excited for it. I'm super pumped for this. It's always amazing to have the heavyweights back and to have the heavyweight kings fight for the belt. This is going to be a spectacular fight. I can't wait for it. This weekend can't come any closer. And then after the fight, to see what the drama unfolds with the contracts of Francis Ngannou is going to be something to really look out for, and for sure we're going to talk about it here. So thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. If you can like, subscribe, hit the bell notification on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let's talk about this. That would be amazing. Also on the podcast, if you could leave review, stars, that'd be great, and we can chat there as well. You can email me at hello@thebodypunch.ca or .com. That'd be great. And thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. This has been the Body Punch Podcast. My name is Naz. Bye.